Someone once told me, there's nothing like humor to help your day. And trust me, this is nothing like humor. So I'm going to start out slow with this one. A police officer was interrogating a young man because of mischief in the neighborhood. He asked him in a rather gruff voice, "Where were you between 5 and 6? The young man paused and then answered, "I believe I was in the first grade." Now that you know what you're in for, let's get rolling. I actually used to tell people when I was in high school that I wanted to be a comedian. And they all laughed. Well, nobody's laughing now. I had a fellow tell me that he wanted to be a comedian, but he had trouble with his throat. And I asked him, was it laryngitis or polyps? He said, no, every time I started telling jokes, someone threatened to slit it. I saw these descriptions for movies and see if you would go to watch them. Here's one. Transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. The movie, The Wizard of Oz. Here's another description. Described it as the perfect chick flick. 2 women fighting over a pair of shoes. The Wizard of Oz. How about this description? Group spends 9 hours returning jewelry. The film, Lord of the Rings. And this one, everyone tries the ice bucket challenge. The Titanic. And for this movie, family's first Airbnb experience goes very wrong. The Shining. And finally, this one, public transportation running ahead of schedule for once. The movie, Speed. This was seen on a church sign. Honk if you love Jesus. Text while driving if you want to meet him. One lady got a little creative when it comes to her work. She called up and said, I believe I have used up all my sick days, so I'm calling in dead. One young lad tweeted this, shout out to my teachers who said I was going to end up working at a fast food restaurant. Tomorrow's my first day. For you history enthusiasts, Chuck Norris was born on May 6, 1945. Germany surrendered on May 7th. Coincidence? Here's a post on Facebook recently. I can't take this long-distance relationship anymore. Fridge, you're coming to my room. Here's an interesting one. At a Substitute Teacher of the Year award ceremony, the MC said, here to receive this year's award for Mrs. Smith is Miss Taylor. The man was telling his friend, my doctor told me to avoid any unnecessary stress, so I didn't open his bill. A man said where he lived in Kansas, it was so flat that his dog ran away and he could see him for 3 days. Here's a riddle. What's red and smells like blue paint? Red paint. Here's one of my favorite quotes. I read this online. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. That was from Abraham Lincoln. I passed a man sitting on his porch and asked what his plans were for the day. He said, well, I haven't finished doing nothing from yesterday. Sometimes I daydream about losing weight, but I always get interrupted by the sound of me chewing cookies. A lady went to the dentist and was told she needed a crown, and she said, I know, right? Here's advice for mothers. Good mothers let their children lick the beaters. Great mothers turn the mixer off first. Now, this sign is beginning to appear in buildings. In case of an emergency, please exit before tweeting about it. They found this one in a complaint box at a workplace. The difference between this place and the Titanic is the Titanic had a band. A man was telling me, nothing makes me feel more patriotic than a 3-day weekend. A man was overheard saying, I either need to go grocery shopping or figure out a creative dish using canned peas and cake mix. This man was a forward thinker. He put new carpet in his house that he was going to sell, but before he installed it, He took dark red paint and wrote on the floor, "Get out before it's too late," and with handprints and claw marks leading to the heating vent. I can't wait till those people change the carpet one day. The father was having trouble telling his young twins apart, so we took him to the barber and had a 1 shaved in one and a 2 shaved in his head on the other. A woman was giving young girls advice in the home economics class on what it's like to be a mother. She said, "Gather everything you owned, throw it on the floor, pick it up, repeat endlessly." I saw this one. A lady said, "Some people lack the ability to laugh at themselves. That's where I come in." An adult was giving advice for life to a child. "You can't make everyone happy. You are not pizza." Sometimes in the morning when I'm cooking eggs, I say to myself, I'm just going to flip this omelet and we're having scrambled eggs. Here's one from a sign scene. Septic tanks pumped and swimming pools filled. Not the same truck. This was a suggestion sent to a razor company. Dear shaving company, stop shaving hairless legs. If you want to impress me, please shave a gorilla. A fellow told me once, not only is my short-term memory horrible, but so is my short-term memory. Here's an ad seen in the paper. Interested in time travel? Meet me at 5th and Maple last Thursday at 7 p.m. I overheard this. If it wasn't for my incredible willpower, I would be exercising right now. One man said, I don't snore, I dream I'm a motorcycle. One man told me he went grocery shopping on an empty stomach. Big mistake. He said he's now the proud owner of aisle 4. Here's an interesting sign. Anger management classes postponed for classroom repairs. Here's something to think about. A baby born today probably has more pictures taken in the first 24 hours than its parents had their entire childhood. A lady was telling her friend, whenever I'm sad, you are there. Whenever I'm having problems, you are there. When my life seems out of control, you're always there. Let's face it, you're bad luck. Here's an observation in life. Seeing a spider isn't a problem. It becomes a problem when it disappears. A man was having a terrible time with crows making a mess on his lawn. So he came up with the idea to put up a sign warning what would happen if they kept up their behavior. It read, caw, 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 with exclamation marks. This was a little sign on one of those tip jars you see on the counter at stores. Money is the root of all evil. Cleanse yourself here. There is a moment in the night when you get a cramp in your sleep and you wake up and think, this is how it ends. When you're in the United States and the coach says, I want your A game, remember, it means something completely different in Canada. A man couldn't afford to take his children to SeaWorld, so he took them to the fish market and said, shh, they're sleeping. The number of times you have found hair in your food is not nearly as scary as the number of times you haven't found it. I like the way Twix bars come in the 2s, so you can eat one now and save the other for when you're done with the first one. A woman said her daughter asked her what it was like to have kids, so she interrupted her every 11 seconds until she cried. One child said, every mother on earth gave birth to a child except my mother. My mother gave birth to a legend. One mother said her goal for the weekend was to move just enough so no one thinks she's dead. Here's a sign I saw. Stay away from negative people. They have a problem for every solution. And speaking of negativity, if someone ever tells you you are putting too much barbecue sauce on something, stop talking to them. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Here's a new law on physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, plus a social media overreaction. Here's a sticker seen on a dashboard of a car. Rule number 1, if you are a passenger in my car and I turn the radio up, do not talk. Here's a sign seen in an office. For your safety and mine, I suggest you bring me coffee first. I saw a picture of Barack Obama talking to a boy who was about to go out on a first date with his daughter. The caption read, "While we're waiting for Sasha to finish getting ready, let me tell you about the time I killed bin Laden." Here's sometimes my kids will tell me this. "I'd love to hear your long story, Dad, if you make it short and interesting." A fellow was telling me that he did 5 sit-ups every morning. He said, "It may not sound like much, but there are only so many times you can hit the snooze button." A fellow bought a dog from a blacksmith. He said as soon as he got it home, he made a bolt for the door. Here's some free advice. Don't use the bathroom in your sleep. It's a setup. Behind every great man, there is a woman rolling her eyes. I went to the theater the other day to see my friend's production on puns. Turns out it was just a play on words. Here's a deep thought. The first 18 years of your life are like a free trial. After that, it's pay to play. You know, NASA is able to receive a signal from a spacecraft floating 5 billion miles away, while I lose my Wi-Fi signal when I leave the room. Leo DeRocher said, "Baseball is like church. Many attend, but few understand." Do you remember that coffee commercial? "The best part of waking up," and someone wrote underneath their slogan, "is still a mystery to me." We're all mature until someone pulls out bubble wrap. Our modern internet is a lot like ancient Egypt. People write on walls and worship cats. A mother said in despair, "Sometimes I feel like throwing in the towel, and then I realize it would only make more laundry for myself." Think about this. The entire object of golf is to play the least amount of golf. I actually saw this on a billboard once. "This year, thousands of men will die of stubbornness." Someone wrote in spray paint underneath, "No, we won't." Here's an interesting bumper sticker. It said, "If you can read this, I'm not surprised. Most people can read." One fellow said, "The best part about my job is the chair spins." Another said, "My favorite coworker is the coffee machine." Here's an interesting post I saw. "Just burned 2,000 calories. That's the last time I leave brownies in the oven while I nap." A professor said to his student, "What inspired you to write this essay?" And the student replied, "The due date." Here's a little philosophy. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes it happens because I'm not very smart and I keep making bad decisions. A man swallowed some food coloring. He called poison control and they assured him he'd be okay, but he said, "I feel like I've died a little inside." A plane was taxiing down the tarmac when it abruptly stopped and returned to the gate. After an hour-long wait, it finally took off. A concerned passenger asked the flight attendant, "What exactly was the problem?" The attendant replied, "The pilot was bothered by a noise he heard in the engine. It took us a while to find a new pilot." The boss saw a man loafing on the job and asked him, "Why aren't you working?" The employee replied, "Because I didn't see you coming." A man fills out a job application and waited while the owner reviewed it. When the owner finished reading it, he told the man, "We have an opening for a worker like you." "Oh, great. What is it?" the man asked. The owner replied, "It's called the door." The new owner of a company wanted to make a strong statement to the workers. So the first day as he's going through the workplace, he sees a man leaning against a wall. He tells his assistant, "Give that man $300 and fire him." The assistant says, "But sir," and the owner cut him off and said, "I don't want to hear any excuses. You heard me." Later in the office, he asked what that man did and when he could be replaced. The assistant said, "Well, he was the pizza delivery guy and you gave him a $300 tip." Here's some information you might find handy. The difference between a northern zoo and a southern zoo is this. A northern zoo has a picture and a description of the animal. A southern zoo has a description along with the recipe. A man checked a book out of the library called How to Hug. He was disappointed when he got home and found it was an encyclopedia. On the first day of work, a college graduate was handed a broom and by his new boss. He was told to sweep the floor. He looked at the boss in disgust and said, "Hey, I'm a state university graduate." The boss took the broom back and said, "I'm sorry. Here, let me show you how it's done." There's a fine line between fishing and standing on the shore looking like an idiot. I found some interesting newspaper headlines. Here's one. One-armed man applauds kindness of strangers. Another said, experts say death by firing squad isn't that bad. How about this one? Psychics predict world didn't end yesterday. And finally, city unsure why sewer smells. One woman was telling her friend, "I was left on the doorstep with a note on my dress." Her friend asked, "What did it say?" She replied, "I don't know. I was too young to read." Two silkworms were in a race. They ended up in a tie. I read a haiku the other day about a man getting out of bed. It went, no, 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 no. Brilliant. And it rhymed. A marriage counselor asked a couple when they began to drift apart. They both agreed it was when they bought their waterbed. A husband said to his wife one day while they were on a trip, "I know where I am. I've been lost here before." Billy and Johnny. Billy says to Johnny, "My brother thinks he's a dog." Johnny says, "Well, how long has he thought that?" And Billy says, "Since he was a pup." Betty was talking to Sue, and Betty said to Sue, he says, "My sister thinks she's a chicken." And Sue asked her, "Have you taken her to the doctor?" And Betty said, "No, we need the eggs." Patient says to the doctor, "Doctor, I've lost my memory." And the doctor said, "When did this happen?" And the patient says, "When did what happen?" A man walks into a doctor's office, and there's a dollar bill on the wall, and he asks the receptionist what it was. And she said, "That's the first dollar he ever made." And then next, the man walks into the examination room and sees a skeleton. He says, "Oh, that's nice. He's kept his first patient, too." Here's a sign that was seen in the gym. Exercise, the poor man's plastic surgery. A policeman sees a woman weaving in traffic. He pulls her over and says, "Don't you think it would be safer if you went home and finished making that basket?" And here's some handy etiquette. At least I found it handy. A centerpiece for the table should never be anything prepared by a taxidermist. Another one, do not allow a dog to eat at the table, no matter how good his manners are. While your ears need to be clean, it is generally accepted that this be done in private using your own keys. It is considered bad manners to lay rubber in a funeral procession. At a movie, refrain from talking to characters on the screen. Studies show they can't hear you. When a waitress brought the customer's food to him, she had her thumb on the steak. And the customer said, "Lady, you've got your thumb on my steak." And the waitress replied, "I know, I didn't want it to fall on the floor again." An attorney was cross-examining a doctor on the stand. He said, "Doctor, didn't you say the victim was shot in the woods?" And the doctor replied, "No, I said he was shot in the lumbar region." A comedian goes to the doctor and said, "Doc, there's something wrong with my hearing. I can't hear the audience laugh." And the doctor replied, "There's nothing wrong with your hearing. You just need to work on your act." I gotta go.